Jesuit life will work you towards that. For those of you that were born after 1990, we're listening right now to You Can Call Me Out. And what album is that from, Jay?
That is from Paul Simon's Graceland, way back in 1986.
Okay. My name is Eric Sundrup.
Oh, yeah, and I'm Jay Hooks, and we are doing a video podcast for the Jesuit Post.
So Jay was telling me that he's been listening to this album recently.
I have, yeah. I found this CD in our basement when I was doing my laundry.
I'm sorry. What is a CD?
Oh, dude, whatever. It's a compact disc.
It's not an MP3. You can't buy it on iTunes.
Non-digital means for
playing
playing music.
Talking about
Recording music.
So you liked this album back before iTunes?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I grew up with this album, and I know it practically by heart, and so I've listened to it, a zillion times. But recently, when I've been listening to it, I've really been impressed by the fact that Paul Simon is singing about New York City over these traditional, or not so traditional, African, but very African beats.
Poor boy, empty as a pocket with nothing to lose. Sing ta-na-na, ta-na-na-na. She got diamonds on the floor. She said, honey, take me dancing, but they ended up by sleeping in a doorway by the bodegas and the lights on over Broadway, wearing diamonds on the soles of their shoes.
So that's sort of a juxtaposition. Does that work?
Oh yeah. Oh, I think it totally works. Yeah. It works not because Paul Simon is so incredible. I mean, that's part of the reason.
Although he is,
right?
Okay.
But it works, I think, because Paul Simon is singing about New York, and New York is a place that is also kind of every place.
So New York is New York, but it's also the world.
Yeah, New Yorkers would like to think so anyway.
Every New Yorker I've ever met would probably agree with that.
Yeah, no, but New York really, it's this place that has a very strong and unique identity, but it's also able to accommodate many traditions and many cultures.
Okay.
And that's actually where I see this connection with Christianity, is because I sit around and read theology all day, and I make these connections.
You have a very rough life.
Yeah, I know. It's really awful. But it reminded me, listening to this reminded me that Christian themes are the same way.
Okay, so yeah, Christian themes are worldwide. We've got different cultures in Christianity, so you expect to see different cultures in Christianity all over the place.
Right, and yet it's not tied to one particular culture.
Okay, yeah.
Totally, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's both flexible and fixed in its identity.
Okay. And that would explain a lot of stuff like throughout history. We've seen Christianity shifts or changes a different emphasis as it gets involved with different cultures or encounters other cultures across the world.
Right, and this has been happening since this whole thing began, right? And
when was that?
About 2,000 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, it's this kind of flexibility that helps. For example, Jesuit missionaries, when they went to China in the 18th century, this flexibility helped them out a lot. They were able to put scripture, they were able to put verses from the Bible to a very, very traditional kind of Chinese music.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked. And why did it work? Well, it worked because Christianity was foreign and new and fresh, and yet this music was very traditional and very Chinese. So you had both of those things happening.
Okay. And I think we're actually going to put in a soundbite here, right? It's called the Massive Peking.
Right, the Massive Peking.
So I'm hearing this Chinese mass, and you're telling me that when you're listening to Paul Simon sing about New York City, you're thinking about these Christian missionaries in China?
Right, yeah, I'm a dork, right, in case you haven't figured that out.
I can't argue.
Right, yeah. But really, when Paul Simon sings about New York over African music, I buy it, right?
Okay.
I mean, it works. And why? Well, because New York is the kind of place that can embrace all this diversity and yet still be New York.
Okay, so New York has this identity that, it can be put over African beats and it's still genuine.
Right, it still rings true.
Okay.
Right? Just like when I hear this Catholic Mass over traditional Chinese music, it rings true. And that's because New York is a place and Christianity as a tradition have this kind of core identity and yet a kind of constant flexibility that makes its transition from culture to culture genuine.
Okay, so then you would say probably if Christianity compromises either on its core identity or at the same time on its flexibility, then it's no longer genuine either.
Right.
So I mean, then we've got our analogy here. You got Paul Simon singing about Tupelo, Mississippi over African beats.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, we're actually going to do a little trick about that. If you can figure out why Tupelo, Mississippi is famous in musical culture, make sure you make a comment or send an email to the Jesuit Post, and we will make sure we put your name up here for catching what we're talking about.
Right.
But thank you so much for joining us. And this has been a video podcast video, something like that, from the Jesuit Post.